In the Carboniferous world explored by Stone Detective, Earth was once a kingdom of giant insects. The skies were ruled by dragonflies with wingspans exceeding a meter, while swampy forests writhed with millipedes larger than you. These were the true ancient overlords, their bodies utterly dwarfing modern relatives and dangerous enough to consider you part of the menu. Yet, puzzlingly, these giants vanished abruptly from Earth's history. The reign of the giant insect dynasty collapsed as if wiped away by an invisible hand. Was it a sudden drop in atmospheric oxygen that left them gasping, dramatic environmental upheaval that robbed them of habitat, or an unavoidable sacrifice written into the logic of evolution itself? Why did this great transformation occur, and what force, or who, ended the insect kingdom? In this episode, we travel across time to trace the rise and fall of the prehistoric insect empire, asking how it once ruled the world and why it disappeared so suddenly. 350 million years ago, Earth resembled a living nightmare. In humid swamps and dense primeval jungles, giant insects crawled across the ground and even took to the air. Until one day everything came to a halt. Some species were forced to shrink, while others vanished entirely. For decades, scientists searched for answers, until a University of California research team conducted the largest paleontological survey ever, analyzing tens of thousands of fossils spanning hundreds of millions of years, revealing that environmental change alone was not the sole culprit and that the real mastermind lay elsewhere. Rewinding to the Carboniferous, vast lush forests stretched endlessly, with soggy swamps, constant rain, towering lycopsids, and giant horsetails weaving a primordial green wilderness where insects were the undisputed rulers, so enormous it felt as though the entire planet were their stage. These forests differed radically from today's. Dead trees did not rot away but fell into swamps, piling up layer upon layer for millions of years because bacteria capable of breaking down lignin had yet to evolve. Compressed over time, they formed thick coal seams, locking away carbon dioxide underground and fundamentally altering atmospheric composition, pushing oxygen levels beyond 35%. Far above today's 21%. This unstable world burned easily. A lightning strike could turn forests into raging infernos, with even wet wood igniting instantly, while oxygen-rich air supercharged insect growth, allowing bodies to balloon to astonishing sizes. The key to this gigantism lay in insect respiration. Unlike lung-breathing vertebrates, insects rely on complex tracheal systems that deliver oxygen directly to tissues, a method that today limits body size because larger bodies move oxygen less efficiently, but under Carboniferous oxygen levels, efficiency soared and the size ceiling shattered, unleashing giant insects onto the scene. Today, encountering a 30-centimeter centipede in the wild is enough to raise goosebumps, but in forests 300 million years ago, millipedes were truly terrifying. Reaching 2.6 meters in length and weighing up to 50 kilograms, their diet went far beyond plants, and anything that crossed their path, including a time-traveling human, could become dinner. For ages, these giants ruled sky and land, until once again everything stopped. The giants vanished, leaving behind only the small, seemingly harmless insects we know today. So what really ended the insect kingdom? Around 305 million years ago, as the Carboniferous drew to a close, Earth remained lush and wet, with car-sized millipedes still writhing through forests, giant dragonflies circling the canopy, and scorpions 10 times the size of modern ones. But this glory would last only a few million more years before disappearing entirely. And scientists now know that this extinction was not a sudden asteroid-driven catastrophe like that which ended the dinosaurs. Instead, the cause was more hidden yet deadly: suffocation. In the final few million years of the Carboniferous, vast swamps dried up and forests fragmented, a process later known as the Carboniferous rainforest collapse. At this moment, an invisible player entered the game as Earth encountered new types of bacteria never seen before, microbes that learned how to break down lignin, shattering the old rule that wood and dead plants could not decay. Massive amounts of organic matter were decomposed, releasing carbon dioxide and driving a sharp drop in atmospheric oxygen. By the middle of the Permian, oxygen levels had fallen to about 22%, nearly the same as today, which was a fatal blow for giant insects that relied heavily on oxygen-rich air. Even so, some giants stubbornly held on. Legendary Permian dragonflies still flew through thinner air, with bodies up to 43 centimeters long and wingspans of 70 centimeters, true rulers of the sky. But as conditions continued to worsen and ecosystems collapsed again and again, more species vanished, and even the toughest giants could not escape extinction. The last to fall was the ancient six-winged flying insect meganeuralike forms, among the earliest gliders of the prehistoric world, with wingspans up to 55 centimeters, ranking among the largest flying insects ever. They were not wiped out by predators or sudden climate catastrophe, but effectively abandoned by plants. These insects once fed on pollen and plant tissues using complex mouthparts, perfectly adapted to forests of horsetails and early conifers. Yet by the late Permian those familiar plant communities declined or disappeared, carbon dioxide rose again, plant nutritional value dropped, and drought-tolerant newcomers took over, leaving these giants without suitable food and unable to adapt, vanishing alongside the old vegetation. New predators then became the key factor preventing any giant insect comeback, even when oxygen later rebounded and insects were no longer physiologically constrained, giant forms never returned. This puzzle became especially clear when scientists examined the early Cretaceous, about 150 million years ago, a time when oxygen rose from 10 to 15% to around 20%, yet insect size remained modest. Paleontologists at the University of California, Santa Cruz analyzed over 10,000 flying insect fossils spanning 320 million years, grouped into 10 million-year intervals, comparing maximum body size with oxygen levels, and found that for the first 170 million years insect size was almost entirely dictated by oxygen. The higher the oxygen, the bigger the bugs. But between 150 and 130 million years ago, this rule suddenly broke, likely with the appearance of the first birds. Early birds, though only about 60 centimeters long, under 1 kilogram in weight, and clumsy by modern standards, were still dangerous to large insects. The bigger the insect, the less agile, the slower the flight, and the easier the meal. The rules of the sky changed. Size no longer mattered as much as speed and maneuverability. Birds became increasingly skilled flyers, and between 90 and 60 million years ago, bats joined the hunt. Since then, despite oxygen remaining around 21%, insect size has never broken past old limits. Today, the largest flying insects have wingspans of only 6 or 7 centimeters, while in the late Triassic, under similar oxygen levels but with no aerial predators, some insects reached 15 to 18 centimeters. Continuous pressure from birds and bats has permanently capped insect size. Evolutionary biologist John Harrison notes that these findings strongly support the hypothesis that the rise of birds and bats was the critical force preventing insects from re-evolving into giants. Scientists now widely agree that the fall of the giant insect kingdom was not a single event, but a complex chain unfolding over millions of years. First, tropical swamp rainforests vanished, replaced by fragmented, nutrient-poor woodlands. Second, new bacteria lowered oxygen by decomposing wood and releasing carbon dioxide, forcing insects to shrink and driving many extinct. And finally, the arrival of efficient avian predators delivered the finishing blow, treating insects not only as snacks, but also as competitors for food, bringing an end to a dynasty that once ruled Earth 350 million years ago. The once glorious kingdom of giant insects vanished completely after 200 million years, leaving behind only the tiny descendants we see today. What continues to puzzle paleontologists is that even at modern oxygen levels, without natural enemies, ancient insects should in theory be several times larger than their modern counterparts. The giant mantis-like insects of the late Triassic, with wingspans reaching 40 centimeters, stand as proof. This suggests that oxygen alone no longer dictated insect size. Predation pressure from birds and bats also became a decisive constraint. Of course, without the oxygen-rich atmosphere of the Carboniferous, those colossal forms could never have existed, yet if predators disappeared today, insects might still grow several times larger. Ironically, if those ancient giants were transported into the modern world, their fate would be equally grim. The largest individuals would suffocate from oxygen shortage, surviving less than an hour, and even smaller insects would struggle in today's dry, unstable climate, not to mention the constant threat of birds and bats. A Carboniferous giant insect suddenly appearing in the present would face low oxygen, unfamiliar plants, arid conditions, and predators everywhere, giving it no survival advantage at all. So the question arises, if you were suddenly dropped into a world ruled by giant insects, could you survive? The answer is not encouraging. From the very first moment, the Carboniferous world shows no mercy. You stand in a muddy swamp where every step is a struggle, breathing air so rich in oxygen that it first feels exhilarating, then quickly makes you dizzy as oxygen toxicity sets in. You are not the apex predator here, but exposed prey. Every movement echoes through the damp forest. A giant dragonfly buzzes overhead, briefly inspecting you before deciding you are too large to bother with, while the oxygen continues to poison your body, your vision darkening and nausea creeping in. Yet this is the least of your worries. Hidden among wet trunks and tangled vines lurks the largest scorpion in Earth's history, its sharp eyes alert and venomous tail poised, though it usually hunts smaller arthropods, mollusks, and amphibians. You would be eliminated without hesitation. Worse still, the bushes part to reveal a crocodile-sized millipede creeping toward you, an omnivore unconcerned with what you are, satisfied to feed once you can no longer move. Above, giant dragonflies circle with a droning roar, while shadows on the forest floor conceal hunters ready to strike. Fleeing toward water would be your worst possible choice, as Carboniferous waters are ruled by massive prehistoric predators up to 3 meters long, swift and agile, rivaling great white sharks, with early sharks lurking nearby to seize easy prey. In this world, everything is against you. Oxygen slowly destroys your nervous system, breathing, and circulation in a painful decline, though in reality you would never last that long. You would already have become food for a giant crab or another ancient hunter. Falling into the Carboniferous is worse than any nightmare, but now that you understand why the giant insects fell and glimpsed the dangers of their world, we can turn our attention to the other fascinating prehistoric creatures that thrived in this perilous era. If you truly stood in a Carboniferous jungle, your first sensation would be dizziness and fading vision, not from lack of oxygen but from too much of it. An atmosphere so concentrated that even a spark could ignite wetwood. Looking down, you would see your feet sinking into the swamp, a hallmark of the age's humid, wetland-dominated environment. Yet the most astonishing sight would be overhead, where bird-like insects circled above you, their wings beating with an ear-splitting roar that made the air itself tremble. These were the giant ancient insects, such as Meganeura, with average wingspans reaching around 40 centimeters. The largest individuals could reach an astonishing 55 centimeters in size, nearly more than 10 times larger than modern flying insects, making them one of the largest beneficial organisms of the Carboniferous period. The name Guawanchi comes from the complex and exquisitely patterned network of veins on its wings. In addition to 2 pairs of vividly colored wings, small protrusions near the head may have helped maintain balance during flight. It also possessed piercing, sucking mouthparts specialized for feeding on plant fluids, representing an early adaptation to this feeding strategy. Despite its enormous size, this insect had no weapons that would truly frighten you. It was a gentle, herbivorous creature focused solely on nutrient-rich plant juices and showed no interest in humans at all. Deep within the Carboniferous jungles, however, lurked a true nightmare predator, one capable of threatening almost anything in its path. You would never overlook its presence, because it was the largest scorpion in Earth's history. Pulmonoscorpius could reach up to 70 centimeters in length. By comparison, today's largest scorpions barely reach 20 centimeters. Its massive body was covered in a thick chitinous exoskeleton, like natural armor, rendering it nearly impervious to attack. Powerful forelimbs ended in sharp claws capable of easily pinning prey, but the real killer was its curved tail, raised high with a venomous stinger gleaming ominously. A single decisive strike was enough to kill prey on the spot. Unlike ambush predators, Pulmonoscorpius was an active hunter, preying on small arthropods, mollusks, amphibians, and even early reptiles, both on land and in water, earning it a place among the dominant predators of the Carboniferous. Even more unsettling, It had two pairs of eyes, one pair near the center of the head for spatial perception, the other for sensing light, along with sensory receptors across its body, allowing it to rapidly lock onto targets in the dim ancient forests. If you have never feared scorpions before, encountering a 70-centimeter long venomous giant like this would almost certainly create an entirely new fear. Now let us return to the skies of the Carboniferous. Beyond the gentle giant butterfly-like insects such as guawanchi, there existed true aerial rulers whose descendants still fly around us today. More than 300 million years ago, however, their size was beyond imagination. Meganeura, one of the largest flying insects ever, had a wingspan exceeding 70 centimeters and a body length of about 40 centimeters, rivaling modern birds in scale. In the oxygen-rich atmosphere of the Carboniferous, they were the undisputed top predators of the sky, until gliding reptiles began to appear in the early Permian and slowly challenged their dominance. Their enormous compound eyes provided nearly 360-degree vision, easily detecting movement above and below, while strong, spiny forelegs were perfectly adapted for seizing struggling prey. Scientists even speculate that their diet may have included large insects like guawanchi. Their hunting strategy was highly efficient, combining ambush from elevated perches with rapid aerial pursuit. As fast and agile aerial assassins, they excelled at sharp turns and complex maneuvers, effortlessly avoiding obstacles and locking onto targets, with virtually no natural enemies in the sky. On the ground, even formidable giant scorpions had to contend with another terrifying arthropod, the ancient giant millipede. This prehistoric invertebrate was so massive that its sheer size alone was enough to inspire fear. It was the largest millipede in history and the largest terrestrial invertebrate ever to exist. Even the smallest individuals reached about 30 centimeters in length, while the largest grew up to an incredible 2.6 meters and weighed as much as 50 kilograms. By comparison, the longest living millipede today, the African giant millipede, measures only about 33.5 centimeters. These giants had bodies composed of around 30 heavily armored segments, each up to 50 centimeters wide, with a pair of legs beneath every segment. Like many arthropods, they grew by molting, shedding their old armor and replacing it with a stronger new exoskeleton each time. Scientists believe this armor was extremely tough, providing effective protection against potential predators, though in the Carboniferous ecosystem, few predators were capable of threatening them at all. Even giant scorpions would retreat when faced with a millipede several times their size. Unfortunately, fossils of their heads and mouthparts have yet to be discovered, leaving their exact diet a mystery. Nevertheless, most scientists suspect these giants primarily fed on decaying plants and seeds, with juveniles likely being strict herbivores and adults perhaps occasionally sampling carrion, proof that even the most terrifying giants may have preferred a mostly vegetarian lifestyle. It was not even limited to small-scale movements. The wonders of the Carboniferous jungles went far beyond this. Hidden among the swamps lurked a dangerous hunter that specialized in ambushing small reptiles and amphibians. It looked strikingly like a giant spider, but strictly speaking it was not a true spider at all, instead a distant relative known as a giant sea scorpion. This astonishing resemblance once misled paleontologists into believing it was a prehistoric superspider, and it was named accordingly, until further research revealed that it was actually an impressively large marine arthropod, with a body length exceeding 54 centimeters. Its unique body structure allowed it to employ a feeding strategy known as sweep feeding, using its large appendages to stir up riverbeds and swamp mud, scooping up worms, insects, and small arthropods in one efficient motion. Occasionally, it would also turn its attention to small reptiles or amphibians on land, though these targets were usually faster and more agile, making success less likely. More often, the giant sea scorpion lay in wait inside muddy burrows or shallow water, patiently ambushing the unlucky creatures that wandered too close, with almost no chance of escape once they entered its lethal range. When it comes to active hunting, however, this creature was far less formidable than its ancestor, which lived more than 400 million years ago. That ancestor was not only more agile but also significantly larger, reaching lengths of up to 1.6 meters. Even so, when compared with another colossal arthropod, it could only rank a distant fourth. On the grand stage of giant arthropods, Gecalopterus stood out, with a maximum body length of approximately 1.8 to 2 meters. Its broad, compact body made it one of the heaviest and most intimidating predators of its time. Its feeding method was similar to that of smaller relatives, still relying on sweet feeding, though its menu likely included much larger reptiles and amphibians. Yet even this was not the upper limit of arthropod gigantism. The true record holder was Rhinognathes-like forms from around 400 million years ago, reaching lengths of about 2.3 to 2.6 meters, making them among the largest arthropods ever discovered. Their primary weapons were massive claws nearly 45 centimeters long, easily capable of seizing and crushing prey. Despite a body size comparable to a small car, their relatively simple body structure meant their weight was probably less dramatic than expected, perhaps under 100 kilograms. Not every Carboniferous creature followed the path of gigantism. In those damp ancient forests, giant dragonflies ruled the skies and giant scorpions haunted the waters, yet among these titans lived creatures at the opposite extreme, so small that you could crush them underfoot without even noticing. These tiny animals, known as Atercopus, may represent some of the earliest spider-like forms in Earth's history. The smallest individuals measured only a few millimeters, while even the largest reached just 5 centimeters. As early as 400 million years ago, they had already appeared during the Carboniferous and were among the first arthropods fully adapted to life on land, capable of breathing air without relying on water. Their appearance closely resembled modern spiders, with bodies divided into a cephalothorax and abdomen, covered by hard plates, and supported by long, powerful legs. Unlike modern spiders, however, they could not spin silk webs. Their heavily armored cephalothorax earned them the nickname armored spiders. In an era dominated by giant insects, Atercopus was one of the smallest predators, feeding mainly on soft-bodied invertebrates such as worms. They did not rely on venom to hunt, instead pinning prey down with their legs and slowly consuming it. Some researchers even suggest they occasionally fed on plant material, much like certain modern mites. The Carboniferous can be seen as evolution's grand experimental laboratory, where bizarre, gigantic, and often dangerous creatures ruled both sky and land. The fall of the giant insect kingdom was driven partly by a sharp decline in atmospheric oxygen and partly by unstoppable global warming. At the same time, the emergence and evolution of birds as insect predators undoubtedly accelerated this decline. As demonstrated by the Carboniferous rainforest collapse, excessive plant growth led to environmental deterioration, which in turn intensified extinction events. Under the pressure of natural selection, those once dominant giant insects were ultimately forced off the stage of history. Even when oxygen levels rose again around 150 million years ago, insect body sizes never returned to their former glory. So the next time you chase a dragonfly, it might be worth remembering that 300 million years ago, its ancestors may well have been chasing yours. Perhaps the ecological balance we enjoy today owes a quiet debt of thanks to the evolution of birds. Thank you for watching this episode. If you enjoyed this kind of content, consider showing your support, and we'll see you next time.
If you enjoy what you just watched, don't forget to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel to stay updated. This channel is dedicated to exploring top-ranked creatures and the mysteries of our world, from ancient times to the modern era. Stay curious, and we'll see you in the next video.